If you walk through a train station in Berlin at rush hour, you'll hear it. People slipping between languages like they're changing gears on a motorcycle. A kid orders breakfast in German, answers a text in English, then jokes with his friend in Turkish. Nobody thinks twice. It's just life. But fly across the ocean, land in the United States, and the whole soundtrack changes. Here, most of us took 2 years of Spanish. We can say hola, and then we tap out. We're a nation of monolinguals living in a world that speaks in chords. And that's always struck me as strange. This country, this sprawling, chaotic experiment, has more cultures, more histories, more stories than almost anywhere else in the world. Yet somehow, we ended up speaking basically one language. People like to blame laziness, but I think the truth is older, messier, and way more interesting. It's a story about geography, fear, pride, power, and the quiet ways a country decides what parts of itself get to survive. So let's dig in, because if you want to understand why Americans don't speak more than one language, you have to understand the ghosts that built the place. America's big, stupidly big. It's a continent pretending to be a country. You can start driving in Maine, point your car west, and 2,000 miles later through cities, deserts, forests, mountains, and you're still ordering coffee in English. Maybe there's a different accent, or maybe the attitude is a little different, but you'll never hit a border where the language changes. But go to Europe? Well, you sneeze and you're in a different country with a different alphabet. The bread changes, the fashion is different, the swear words change, and you feel the pressure to adapt. Because geography shapes culture more than we'd like to admit. But when you're in the US and all of your neighbors speak the same language for thousands of miles, you don't feel the pressure to learn anything else. Simply put, the geography of the United States did a lot of the work. Especially the oceans. You've got 2 giant moats on either side of the country. And our land neighbors? Canada, above, already speaks English. And Mexico below. Now, sure, Mexico speaks Spanish. But early America wasn't exactly eager to learn from the people it was busy taking land from. And so English tended to dominate from the start, but it wasn't necessarily on purpose, at least to begin with. It just happened. It happened because the country grew up insulated, comfortable, a place where one language was enough to get by. And comfort, historically, is the enemy of curiosity. Here's the twist. America used to be wildly multilingual. If you walk through New York in 1900, you'd hear German, Yiddish, Italian, Polish, Cantonese, whole neighborhoods built on the vocabulary of the old world. Chinese communities in San Francisco, Scandinavian enclaves in the Midwest, and Navajo, Goshute, Lakota, hundreds of other indigenous languages covered the continent before European colonizers arrived. Skip forward a few generations, and Americans are now taught in school that the US of A is the great melting pot. But when you look into it, the melting pot isn't about celebrating differences. It's about melting them away. Schools punished kids for speaking their home languages. Newspapers warned that bilingualism was un-American. Immigrants were told in no uncertain terms, English is the price of admission, and bilingualism, that's a threat to unity. The country didn't want a mosaic. It wanted one language, one identity, one story. And the idea of one identity meant one language must dominate. And English won. And if you want to build a monolingual society, there's an easy way to do it. Just teach foreign languages beginning at 13. Long after the brain's prime window for picking up languages has closed. And then teach them badly. Memorize, regurgitate, forget. And rather than make them mandatory, treat them like electives, a sort of academic side quest that doesn't really matter. And that's the American school system in a nutshell. Meanwhile, in many other countries, kids are learning a second language before they lose their baby teeth. They grow up hearing multiple tongues in cartoons, on the street, and in school. So here in America, instead, we end up with millions of adults who took Spanish in high school but can't hold a conversation. It's not because they're incapable of learning. Not because it's a flaw in the system. It's not a bug. It's the system working exactly as designed. I look at my own experiences with languages. I'm a bit of a language nerd. I think I'm a glutton for the syntax and vocabulary of somewhere else. I've studied French, German, Spanish, and Italian. I even dabbled for some reason in Icelandic for a while. And when my wife and I spent 3 weeks in India a number of years ago, I dabbled in a little Hindi. I've surrendered uncounted hours of my life to the digital glow of self-learning apps and the dusty pages of study guides. And look, I can pick the stuff up. I've got quite the ear for it. But these things, they're really fragile. You have to work it, speak it, hear it regularly. Because if you don't, no matter how hard you study, it just vanishes. And here's the kicker. As an American tourist in Europe and elsewhere, I have always tried to study and do my best to learn the language before I visit. And whenever I'm having a conversation with somebody who's local, I can get through the beginnings of the conversation and the basics, but once it becomes more of a complex conversation, the local instantly recognizes my accent and switches to English. It's easier for them because their English is way better than my French or Italian or Spanish. Then I get home and I live in an area of the country that speaks English with a relentless zeal. So trying to maintain even a ghost of fluency here is a beautiful yet ultimately desperate exercise in futility. Language isn't just communication, it's identity. And America has a very long history of policing identity. During World War I, speaking German in public could get you arrested. German language newspapers were shut down. Many schools banned the language entirely. During World War II, Japanese Americans were punished for using their own language, even in their own homes. English became tied to patriotism, to loyalty, to being one of us. Now, the US doesn't really have an official language, unless you count the silly 2025 executive order. But culturally, it absolutely does. Road signs, menus, government forms, utility bills, corporate PowerPoints, and legal documents, all in English and only English. The national anthem, only sung in English. And once a language becomes that much of a critical part of a national identity, it's really hard to shake. Then Hollywood happened. Rock and roll happened. The internet happened. And suddenly English wasn't just an Anglo-American language, it was the global language. When your movies, music, and tech dominate the world, you don't feel the need to learn anyone else's tongue. After all, everyone else learns English. I've watched American movies in Europe, heard English language music in India, and watched Friends in English in Palau. From a tech perspective, YouTube, Google, Amazon, and WhatsApp dominate practically worldwide. Everyone comes to you speaking a language you understand. It's a privilege, and like most privileges, it makes you a little blind. Here's the part people may not realize. America is multilingual as hell. More than 350 languages are spoken in American homes. Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Arabic, Hmong, entire worlds tucked into neighborhoods, kitchens, and family stories. But because of assimilation pressure, most of those languages don't survive more than 2 generations. The system squeezes them out. The diversity is there, it's just quiet. But I think things are changing. Bilingual households are growing. Spanish is booming. It's estimated that by 2060, the United States will be the second most Spanish-speaking country in the world. And younger Americans are more open to the idea that speaking more language isn't a threat, it's a superpower. And globalization is forcing the issue. TikTok, WhatsApp, YouTube, international travel, remote work. The world is smaller now, and Americans are starting to notice. So why don't Americans generally speak more than one language? Because history pushed them toward one story, one tongue, one identity. But history isn't destiny. Languages come back, cultures evolve, people change, and maybe, just maybe, America's next chapter sounds a little more multilingual than the last.